The Tata family could have become tremendously wealthy, but most of the businesses were set up as institutions for the country. Personal ownership and personal wealth happened when it happened, but was never the criteria for these companies to be established. We as a country, or the citizens of a country, need to get back the pride that we should have, that we are Indians. Not that we're Punjabis or Parsis or Tamils, but that we're Indians first. That we have a country that we belong to and that we should be proud of. We seem to be losing that somewhere. We shouldn't have that sense of pride every time we go to war or have a conflict or get attacked by terrorists. It should be there all the time. I think that that's what the country needs at this point in time. It needs everybody to rally around. One hopes that the young of tomorrow will be driven by that to some extent. You get driven by some fire within yourself. You don't necessarily know what it is. It could be the people who lead an organization. It could be the passion with which somebody is pursuing what he wants to do. It may be taking the side of the downtrodden because he's being picked at. It varies from time to time, but there's an issue of wanting to make a difference. And if you can help make that happen, that consumes you and provides you with the motivation to go forward. To work on the disparities that one found in the country and to work for the common good of the common man. This was a different thing. It set up cancer hospitals, schools, and institutions of that nature. So through the years, the trusts have dealt with individual hardships. They have given scholarships to students. We've had past presidents of India who have been scholars of those Tata scholarships. What is refreshing is that the holding company for the whole Tata Group, which Jamsetji Tata set up, that 66%, or at that time more, 85% of its income and dividend outflow became income to the trusts for the common good of the Indian citizen and foreign causes. Well, I think it was a different view of ownership. Mr. J.R.D. Tata often used to refer to Tatas as being the trustees of the people. The Tata family could have become tremendously wealthy by having distributorships, partnerships, etc. in the businesses, but most of the businesses, whether it was steel, whether it was power, or institutions, were set up as institutions for the country. So Jamsetji Tata could just as well have dedicated Tata Steel to the nation or dedicated Tata Power to the nation. They belong to the shareholders and to the people. Personal ownership and personal wealth happened when it happened, but was never the criteria for these companies to be established.
The one thing that a lot of people talk about is the Tata culture, the Tata way of life. How have you managed to retain that Tata culture?
First of all, that culture becomes embodied in the DNA of an organization. It's set off by the early leaders, the founder in our case, who never was in need of wealth because he had it all, but it wasn't what drove him. Of giving India its own independence in steel or power or the hospitality area. Well, what gave him the pride that he had made India self-sufficient? He didn't at that time look at the companies as being his, but belonging to the country. And then through J.R.D. Tata for 50 years or so, where J.R.D. would stand in a line rather than jump
Beat
a
the
queue,
Yeah.
where he would give way to a customer first and not him. And that humility, I think, became embodied in what all the leaders of Tata companies had done. And we should protect that ferociously. The day we lose that, I think we've lost an important facet or input in the companies that we have. And the day we decide to cheat, the day we decide to do something that holds something for us and not for the customer, I think we will have lost a very, very important asset.
Has it been tough, especially during times when values were being trampled upon because of politics, competition, blah, blah, blah?
Yes, I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments when those issues came up and those decisions had to be made. Happily, at every time, boards stood together and leadership stood together in saying that's not what we do. We, over the years, on occasion, have suffered as a result of that. But on the whole, I believe that it's very important to come back at night and say, I have not succumbed. Sometimes you didn't know if you were doing the right thing. All things are not black and white. You have a choice. One choice leads you down a certain path long term. Another leads you down another path short term. And then you have to weigh one issue against another. Hopefully you make the right decision. Sometimes we don't, but we do it with innocence or naivety rather than intent and negativity. So I think that's a sort of dilemma that faces many leaders in the corporate world or politics.
When you took over and sat in that corner office in 1991, what was the one thought that raced through your mind?
The one thing I had, which maybe is not so evident, is I had a terrific mentor in J.R.D. Tata. I remember walking back from the meeting in where I was appointed chairman. When he walked back, I walked with him to his office and he told his secretary, Alu, we'll have to move out of here now.
Superb.
And I said, no, Jay, you don't move out. This is your office as long as you want it. So he said, really? So I said, yes, it is. He said, where would you sit? I said, where I'm sitting today. I have an office down the hall, and that's fine. So I was very lucky in having him there. He lent his weight when he had to. Example, the retirement age. Without his support, I could never have done that. So the face of Tatas may change, but so long as there's still the same drive to make this an enterprise or a conglomeration of enterprises that operate with ethical standards and value systems, I think I would feel very proud.
When you look back at this life, what would you define as your biggest achievement?
I find that there have been many moments which make one feel a sense of great satisfaction, and there have been a few times when it's almost despair. Many companies disintegrate in that kind of period or are just a tombstone. And I think we should do everything we can to preserve it and to continue that. As I said earlier, the group may change. It may look different in the next 30 years, 50 years, but it should embody the same values and the same ethical standards that it has had. It should never forget that most of its earnings go to philanthropy, not in the pockets of founders and leaders. and that it's doing something for the common good of mankind. And I think that's very satisfying if that were to happen.
How would Ratan Tata like to be remembered?
Very quickly, I'd like to be remembered as a person who made a difference. Not anything more, not anything less. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to interact with you, and the pleasure has been mine. Thank you.